Hi, good morning, members. All right, let's talk about square and rectangle stones, and I'll give you my perspective on some things. Because when we go shopping stones, we get mesmerized by the flash and the color and the beauty of these things, and we think, oh, I'll find a great pattern, and I'll put that stone in there. So we take them home, and then we realize that, oh no, we're afraid of this guy, right? This is the one we're afraid of. Narrow, thick, and pointy on all four corners. So right away, while we love the stone and we've taken it home, when we go to wrap it, I think we get nervous. So let's talk about picking stones. So when I'm shopping for my stones and I come across squares and rectangles that I love, before the urge to buy them, I try to take a breath and I try to examine the stone. You know, first we should, if we're going to resell these as jewelry, you should examine the stone anyway and make sure that, you know, it's edged the way you want, that you can envision a wrap on it. But when we're shopping squares and rectangles, they're not all the same. And this is true also for ovals and rounds. When I look at the edge of a cabochon, depending on my skill set and how many frames I know how to set, I'm going to make sure that I have an edge that I'm comfortable with, right? So for instance, the stone I used for Otis, it's a very nice square stone. Almost square, not quite, it's a little more rectangle, but the edge is nice. The corners are sharp, but they're not drastic, right? They appear drastic, but they're not. This one is a little more drastic in sharpness on those corners. You see that? That's edged. This is more rounded. And then the side has a definite edge. It's a soft slope, but it's still a nice edge if I look at it down this way. So if I intend to band it, for instance, like Otis, here, with bands, this is Otis. I just popped him out. With bands on the side, if I intend to do this kind of framing, then I want to make sure I have an edge because that's what I need for this, right? If this were not edged and I put this type of frame on it, what would happen is that I would get a gap. You know, my stone would be sitting here and I would have this lip above the face of the stone if I framed it this way. And what I mean by that are stones that are sloped, right? This is not an edged cabochon. This is a sloped dome, what I call a sloped dome. There is no, you know, squared off, there is no edge here. So if I put 3 bands on it, I expect that I would see a lip rise from here. So to frame this one, I'm going to think I have to have a wire harness that I can slope more onto this frame and not be so upright, but be more like this. Or do one of our hammered and layered cage frames on something like this, or prongs. You know, this would be a great one for prongs because the prongs would just do a nice lay down right here on these corners, right? Right here, right here. So this one, while I might buy both or all 3 of these stones, they're quite different in how I'm going to handle them, right? This one is the largest one with the softest slope. This one is a nice medium average one. This one is the smallest one, but the thickest one, the sharpest one, and the most narrow one. So it's, you know, this is a hefty rise for me to get wire on, which means that this one is probably ideal for a frame such as Otis, where it's more banded style, right? I could also do banded prongs on this one because there's not a lot of surface space here. So by the time I get wire going on here, I'm going to cover a lot of this stone to try to hold the girth of it in. So this one would be a good candidate for, you know, maybe 2 prongs on the bottom, couple of prongs here on the side, or banded. And I'm going to wrap this one for you because even banded, by the time we pull tabs onto this, it's real tight. and may not be the most attractive way to wrap it. So we'll come up with a rectangle frame, but then we're going to drop some wires down from what comes from the bail wires up top. And we'll go through that in a minute. For this rectangle wrap, I'm going to use 4 pieces of 20 gauge soft round copper wires. You could also use square wires. And I've chosen 4 bands because the thickness of my stone will take about 4 20 gauge wires pretty well. And this is going to be a banded design. I've pre-straightened them. They're all cut to 12 inches long, and now I'm just going to put tape on the 2 ends to help me hold things together. So I've got my wires lined up. They're nice and straight. I'm coming in about 2 inches from the end of my wire. I'm keeping these side by side, and I'm just taping them together. I'm going to walk my fingers over to the other side so I keep them side by side and they don't crisscross. And I'm going to take a second piece of tape and I'm going to tape about 2 inches off of the ends. Okay? These are 12 inches of wire. My stone is 3/4 inch long, well, maybe a little longer actually, almost an inch. It's probably about 24 millimeter right here. So 24 millimeter or an inch long and a 1/2 inch wide. And I can see that it's a 1/2 inch wide because my cry-cut boards are 1/4 inch marks. This is 1/2 inch between here and here. 1/4, 2/4, 1/2 inch. Okay? And then this square is 1 inch by 1 inch, so not quite 1 inch long and about a 1/2 inch wide. All right, so I'll hold. A little trick I like to do is I put a little piece of tape on the back of my cabochon and I stick it to the cry-cut board so that when I go back and forth for measuring, it doesn't pop, you know, it stays in the same place and it doesn't shift around on me, so I can always remember. You know, some of these are very symmetrical. Some of them are slightly off, and visually you may not see it. So I always try to just determine what's the top, what's the bottom, and then I stick it right here. All right, and I stick it in the middle. So here's a 1/2 inch mark, and here's the center, so I know where the center mark of my stone is. All right. These are 12 inches of wires. So I'm going to lay them down against my measure, and I'm going to measure at 6 inches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and I'm going to find the center of my wire and make a mark. I also then mark where the corners of my stone are, so I'm just going to follow this line down. So right about here. And then I intend to band just the corner through to the other corner. So a band that goes just right here. The center I'm going to leave blank, you know, unbanded, and then I'm going to band from here to here. So what that means is if this is my rock center, this is my corner, and I want to band from about here to here to make my corner. I'm actually going to give it a little bit more. So I'm just going to split these 2 in half, go to the 16th mark, you know, 1/16, or I'm sorry, 1/8, and then I'm going to band from here to here. So from here to here are my bands. From here to here are my bands. And my bend will be right here and right here at the corners of the stone. So when I go to band this, I might just earmark or count how many wraps gets me to here, because that's going to be covered up, right? So now that I have my beginning marks, I'm going to take my 22 gauge half round wire, and I'll get about 6 or 8 inches. Let's get 8 inches of that to make sure you don't run short. And half round wire has a flat side, so we'll keep the flat side facing the bottom, and you'll make a 1-inch bend here at the top. The flat side will be on the inside. Just make sure the wire isn't twisted. When we wrap with half round, we're working to keep the flat side against the frame wires. And we're using 9 inches here. We'll just cut it in half so that we have enough for both halves of our wrap. 8 or 9 inches. And I'm going to come up here. Let me change my camera angle so that you can see my camera focus. Okay, so my wraps are going to go from this one to this one. Then I'm going to skip this space, and wraps will go from here to here. All right, so I'm going to count how many wraps, and I'm going to earmark this wrap because that's the bend. All right, so I'll take my half round wire. I'll just slip over all 4 of these wires right here at my first mark, and I'll just hold on to that little fragment, and I'll start at my first mark. My wires are turning on me here. That's okay. Turn them back. So if you're working round wires, be careful that things don't turn on you as you work. Make sure nothing's crisscrossed. And you'll start at this first mark with your half round. Make a nice tight wrap, but don't crush these wires together. Round wires might want to get a little squirrely on you. So you just go overhand, underhand, and I count this first one. So that's 3, 4, 5. You see how they're getting tight here and starting to squish together? I'm going to stop right now, take my flat nose, and tap them down so that, did you see these wires expand back out? I've got 5 wraps. There's 6. There's 7. So I'm going to bend the corner right about 7 or 8. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And this last one is going to get me 13. So I'm going to bend mine right about at 8 to make my corner. I'm going to use this side for my front, so I'm a little bit short. So give yourself, if you're not comfortable, go 6 inches to each half, or 4 inches to each half, or 5 inches to each half. Depends on how much excess you give yourself here or not. Okay, so once I get my 13 wraps, I'm going to trim the excess off so that my cut lays on this frame in the middle here. This one's a little shorter than I like them. I would have liked it more like this, so it doesn't peel off that end, but it should be all right. So those are 13 bands. While I'm here, I'm going to go ahead and mark. There's 13 bands. I'm going to align my center mark back, and I'm just going to make a mark on that 13th, on that 8th band, or right at that corner. And you want to be slightly outside of your corner because, you know, the bend takes a little bit of room as well. So I've just put a mark where the edge of my stone is to know where my bend needs to go. And I can see if I align these back down here, here's my bend, right? That's where I'm going to bend the wire. And then I'll have a little bit of wrap, and I'll have a little bit of wrap, and then I'll have this center space that's bare. So I'll start wrapping from here to here now. So I'll get another 5 inches of my 22 gauge, or 4 inches, depends on how comfortable you are. So I've got 5 inches here of 22 gauge half round. I'm just going to turn down the upper half inch to hold on to it. Let me change my camera focus. And I'm going to start here at my mark for banding, and I'm going to make hopefully 13 wraps. It should be the same. 4, 5. Remember to tap these wires so that they don't start crushing in together. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and one more will be 13. And I'll get these tapped down. I went a little bit longer, but that's okay. I think I wrapped 13 unless I miscounted. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So I've got 13 on both sides. And I'll just trim these on the back side. Make sure you're cutting your ends off on the same side of your wire. So cuts, cuts. Okay, and that's about good there. What I'm looking to do is to make sure that I can leave a little wrap here in the corner, make the bend, and leave a little wrap in the corner. That's what I'm trying to do with this. So I'll mark my other side where the bend is going to go. It's right about there. I'm going to get right on the edge of that mark. I'm going to make sure that my plier is flush with the top of the wire. I'm looking at bands here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. My plier is right about on the 8th one. So to make it consistent for me, I'm just going to go to the very edge wire, this one, because my bend has to be there. So I have a little, it's better to give yourself a little bit of gap than to go too tight and it doesn't fit. So I'm just going to basically bend this in half right here, holding all my wraps right there. And I'm going to make a nice 90-degree turn in that wire. I'll flip it so that I can give myself the same hand position. You're just going to make sure that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I'm going to hold it right about here, just like I did the other side, right on the edge of the wire. Make sure that I'm flush at the top. I'm going to try to give myself a nice 90-degree bend. I did it this way so you could see it. And that should be pretty good. My bands should level, should end up even. And if they're not, you can just scooch them a little bit or unravel 1 or 2 and make them even. Your wires should also, you see how they're kind of like this? Right? Square them up so that when it lays down, it's a flat frame and it's not higher on one side than the other. Okay, so now let's just take it back down around our stone and see how we did. Hopefully it fits and it isn't too tight. Put your tape tabs up, it'll help you a little bit. And it might be a little bit snug going in there because it's a sharp corner, but don't give up on your fit until you really get it there. So mine's a little bit tight, you see. So I'm going to adjust it a little bit, and it's probably good that you see it. I'm going to take it from here, hold on to the side, nice and flat with your plier. See where my thumb is helping to take this corner out a little bit. And then I'm going to straddle this corner and tap. Straighten it back out. It'll make your bands go a little wonky, but you just push them back together. Just get control of things. It's okay if it's a little bit bumpy. You can get your nylon jaw. Probably have to know how to do this anyway. Tap everything nice and straight again, and then I'm going to go one step to the right because I know it needs to be bigger. And remember that you got to do the same on the opposite side. So, and I'm going to retake this bend. And I'm going to tap right here to correct my corner. Okay, you can see this bend is visibly lower. You see the wrap? Okay, but it doesn't look bad. I got a little bit of a bend in the frame there. You just get control of it. Get it back to nice and square. And now we'll correct this one. I'll hold on to the bend that went too short right here. Put my thumb on this corner and push my thumbnail into that little corner to help open it up a little bit. Straddle the corner and pinch to straighten it back out. Go to this side, you can do the same. You know, if you have a warble in it, you can just work it out carefully. It's a little hard on the hands. And then I'm going to step to the right slightly because mine was a little too small. Put my thumb right here. Make a 90-degree bend back in this wire. Okay, so that's pretty good. I don't know how I got my two wires so different in length over here. I'm not quite sure what I did. Anyway, you're going to have plenty of wire. Yours should be level. Teacher got hers marked wrong or something. I don't know what I did. Okay, so now I'm going to put it back in here. I'm going to make sure this bottom is flat against my stone. And you see it fits a little better. But because I had alterations here, I've got a little lift that I can just tap out. I'm going to use my nylon jaw. It's a little wider. Just work your frame until you get a nice fit on the bottom of your cabochon here. And that's pretty good. Okay. My hands are having a bit of a tough time pushing. It's not as hard as you think. Okay. So I have a nice fit there. I'm going to take, I've still got a little bit of a rise here in the middle. That's a pretty good fit. It can be pretty tight with these, you know, corners right here like this. Okay, so let me try to pick this up so you can see it a little better. That's why I tape my stone there, because you're pushing against it. It's just a little easier if you have the tape helping you hold it. So that's a pretty snug fit. It is going to work, you know, it appears to be a little bulky there, but it's not. It's because we added wire here, right, in our bands. So that would be normal, that breadth of a gap that you're seeing right there. It's because, you know, we added bands to the bottom. So this is a pretty good fit. I'm pretty happy with that. My corners are even, and they fit the bottom of my cab pretty well. So now, if I were going to pull tabs onto this stone, I would have to do it now while these wires are still straight. If I make a sharp bend to finish capturing the top of my stone right here, I eliminate my ability to draw wire from the top. For thinner stones, it wouldn't really matter. If I made this bend, there's probably enough right here and right here that I could have scaled the stone. For this stone, if I bent it right here, there's not going to be enough wire here to get me comfortably over this shoulder of the stone without looking like I put a size 5 rock into a size 2 wire frame, right? It would look like it's trying to burst out of there. So you want to make the fit comfortable, and you want to think about what kind of design you're doing. But this is such a narrow stone that pulling tabs from both sides, I feel like, would just really almost, you know, cover the majority of it, and I may not want just straight line looks here. So what I think I'm going to do instead is take these corners, and the same way that we did Otis, we're going to turn it and make this cute little sea wave down here in these corners. It'll hold the corners, but it won't look like it's, you know, such a square cage then. So we'll add some elegance with those types of corners there. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that my stone is seated, and then I'm going to mark. I'm going to basically do the same, you know, over here. I want to wrap from right below the corner to right above the corner so that I get a little wrapped corner like this on both sides here. We'll wrap them first so that we can remove the tape, and then we can shift the wire without the tape being there, because we can't pull the wire right now either because it's all taped in. Okay, so I'll put my stone back into place. I'll fit my frame nicely on the stone, and I'll make my marks on the side of my wire here. Go ahead and mark the top, you know, and certainly get on your measure. I'm trying to stand to the camera. You be in front of your measure and get a better view of it than I've got here. So I'm just going to mark the edge of my stone. Then I'm going to mark a little bit above it, about 1/16 above it, just to give myself an idea. And since that mark is the corner of my stone, I need to wrap right below it to right above it. You take a better measure than me. I was trying to do it a little bit odd in the camera here, so I'm kind of eyeballing it here. So I'm going to wrap from here to here, and the bend is at that corner, but we won't bend it just yet. So we'll repeat with the 22 gauge. Get 2 pieces 5 inches long and wrap your 2 marks. So here I'll just fold down an upper half an inch or an inch so I can hold on to it. I'll get aligned here on my mark. Now the wire's bent, so I have an obstacle. Hold on to the short end for some leverage. And you have to kind of squeeze up through there. Keep your flat side against your frame and count your wraps. There goes 3, 4. Remember to tap them so that you don't let these 4 wires buckle up like that. There's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm going to give it 10, and I'm going to leave that there in case I need 1 or 2 more when I get there. And just tap these. Don't kill it because we want to be able to shift these still. And it might be 11. I'll give myself this one and make it 11. I'll cut the shorty off on the inside here, but you'll leave the long one on. Oh, my cutter's no good anymore. Tap that down and leave the long one there in case you need an extra wrap or 2 at the top of this frame when we get there. It's just my habit to not cut those just yet. Okay, and so same on this side. I'll get 5 inches of 22 gauge half round. Make sure you're wrapping from here towards the top of the wires so you leave yourself the long end on top. Okay, so hold your frame in this way. Go ahead and get your little hook over that first mark so you have something to hold on to. And then I'm going to make, I think it turned out to be 11. It might be 12, but we'll get there. I'm going to make 11. There's 3 to go in between my marks here. Four, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and I'll just leave it right there for right now. My marks were not even is why and you know, then you want to look this way. Are they level here? Are they level here? Okay? Remember which side is the front. I put my tabs to the, facing me, so I know that this is the front. I'm going to cut this little shorty off. It's rectangle and we haven't made any bends, so it might not matter, but if your stone is not quite symmetrical, it might matter which way is the front. Since this is the back, I'll just put these wires to the side, kind of park them right there until I might need them. Come down here and refit onto my frame. And you can see that, they both start about the same place, and they're both, when they bend, should meet right before the center, because I have to go, so we should have a little gap like this, same up here, because we need the bail to fit into that little gap. So if you look down here, you'll see we left a little gap. You can envision that same gap up here when these two come together, so that's where the bail will go up. Okay, so we can look, if I need to scooch, a little lower, they should still be able to move. Okay. And now, since I have these wrapped, I'm going to carefully peel away my tape so that I can turn my wires. If you leave the tape on there and you make these turns, it'll all buckle up because it's going to want some of this length. Okay, so here's my front, right? And I said I was going to turn 2 little C waves, just like Otis, into these 2 bottom corners here. So I'm going to get the corner, and the first thing I'm going to do is lift the wire out of the corner. Okay? So I'll hold it like this. I'll take my flat nose plier, get right up against my wraps, and handle only this front wire. I want to turn a tab to start, so it's going to draw wire as soon as you want to turn this, so you'll feel the wire want to move underneath your finger. You see that? That's about 3 millimeters from there to my corner, and I'm just going to start that corner, and then I'm going to get my round nose plier. I'll get my heads right into the corner, the one head to the inside between the 2 wires and the other one right here underneath the wraps. You'll grab it right there, hold on to your frame, and turn your wrist, and you'll just make a little wave like that. I'm going to readjust and turn it slightly more, just like that into the corner. So when you put your stone back in there, it's going to hold that corner for you, and it's pretty. It's not just a straight line, right? But you see how much wire it drew down? So it might make your frame want to seem like it wants to buckle up. It won't. You just get control over it. Keep it rectangle. Keep it nice. You know, my stone has a belly, so eventually this has to be pulled out and opened up a little bit too, so you might as well do it. Okay, now come to this side. Get your flats to start the pull. Hold only that first wire right at the edge of the wraps. Hold your wraps up here and just make a slight right hand turn going into the frame. Okay, and now switch your plier to your round nose. Oof, I got tape stuck on me. Get your plier head right into that bend and right up against the base of the wraps here. You know, you'd be down here doing it on your board. You just can't see me do it down there, so I'm up in the air. And we're just going to turn the wrist, turn the wrist, turn the wrist, till you get a little C wave. That's it. You'll feel the wire draw down. And now this is the front, so lift it open because my stone has belly. If your stone doesn't have so much belly, you don't need to lift it so much. Okay, so that's the front. Woo! And we have to do a back seat for this stone too, right? So we're going to do the same thing to the back wires. Get your plier, get right down here only on that wire at the edge of the wraps. Hold these wraps and turn to the left to draw some wire into the stone or into the frame. Okay, then switch pliers, get your round nose on it, and turn your wrist and cause a nice little C wave at the back there. Make sure your frame doesn't shift too much. Make sure these two stay in the same place next to each other. So you always want to keep an eyeball that nothing's moving too much. Switch hands, and now we'll come to this side. Grip only that wire right at the wraps. You're going to turn the side of the plier that's not against the wraps to the inside of the frame so that you can start it. It'll make it easier for you when you get your round nose up here to get that corner. Hold these wraps, turn your wrist, and make a tab about the same size as this one. Okay, so now you've got a little back seat for the stone as well. Go ahead and take the stone off my tape. I'm going to spread these open. We have to get the stone in there. So now's the time to get it back in there because it's going to get real tight after that. Okay, it's going to be tight to slide it back in, but you can come from the top, Just watch all your corners and make sure they go in. Open these little tabs up if you need to. I did the belly but not the back. You might have to pull the back forward as well. Just work carefully and open these up enough to receive your stone. I'm going to open the front even more so. You see how you can just do that? Kind of like a book. Make sure that your two back ones are sitting nice and flat and that they're approximately the same. Make sure your two sides stay nice and vertical. And now we'll take this stone and put it back in there. Get it into the front there. Make sure it seats in the back. Put it down here on your cry cut board. Make sure you're really seated down here. Make sure the belly of the stone is down so your two back ones are nice. Make sure your two sides are upright. And see my little turns, I'm going to show you. See, my stone is so thick, it's still barely over the belly, so I've got to actually do it a little bit more. Sometimes that happens. You get it in there and you go, holy cow, I got to do more. It's so thick, I still didn't make the corner. Okay? So I'm looking at mine. I have to do a little more. I'm going to try to do it with the stone in place. You're going to be down here on your board so that you don't drop your stone. You make sure it's seated. You might even put the tape back onto it. I need to actually raise the wire more. Okay? So I'm going to come here and just with my fingernail, just try to get the edge, the body of this wire, like make a bigger C wave, right? Just, it's going to give you wire from the back, so just try to make it elegant and raise it up above your stone. When you get it up above your stone, then you can push it onto the stone, right? And push that tab down onto the stone. Ooh. But don't push your stone out of shape like that. So I'm on my cry cut board and I'm just working to raise these sides a little bit. And I'm looking just to get it just over the bottom edge of my stone like that. Okay? Keep these wires nice and these two on the sides and this one on the back, and make sure the back stays nice and flat. As you alter this wire, you know, the whole side wants to kind of buckle and shift. It's okay. You just keep it under control. Work to be elegant right here. Use your fingernail. If you don't have a fingernail that you think you can make a nice curve with, you know, you can always take objects like a sturdy end of a pen that's not sharp so that you're not hurting your stone, and you can just help negotiate that wire over the edge. This is a really tough stone to wrap because of this sharp, high edge. So I keep it taped because your bottom corners kind of want to pull out as well. Okay, so now we'll go to, oof, my hands are, check the back, make sure it stays. We'll go to this side and we'll do the same. You're looking to raise this onto the belly of your stone. And I'm just going to push it with my fingernail right there. Keep this level in the back. You see how I'm just pushing it with my nail to give it more of a C wave right there. It might draw a wire for you, and that's okay. Okay, so I've got it over my edges. Once it comes over my edge, I'm just going to push it down onto my stone body, onto the belly, make sure that everything is still sitting nice. Looks nice from the front. I'm just using the edge of my thumb to kind of help me, pet them up onto the stone. And make sure my sides stay nice. Really important that the bottom stays at the bottom, that the sides stay at the sides, and then you want to check the back and make sure that you have enough coverage. I'm just going to raise the wire onto the back a little bit more as well, so that you have a nice sturdy back. Just use your fingernail and push it in like a little hourglass. Okay, keep the sides on the sides while you're doing that. So that's a nice sturdy back. And we have a nice capture for the bottom here. We're going to take the top wires from these bales and we'll catch these corners up here with some design. It takes a little work to do that. This is probably the hardest stone to wrap out of most stones that you'll get, is a stone shaped like this. Very narrow, but very thick, and very square or very rectangle, with a very deep belly. These are tough. Okay, so far so good. Just work it until it's elegant. Don't make drastic moves there. Just make nice lines and make sure they lay on your stone. I'm just going to work mine a little bit more. And then you do have additional, you got 2 bands here. You really only need the one. So if you wanted to draw additional design up, you could. I'm not going to, because this one is so small and so narrow that I think pulling any more wire up might be too much from the sides. I can drop wire from these and give more front design. Okay, so now that the bottom of our stone was our focus, we've got it in there pretty well. I'm going to squish this a little bit more in there, this corner. I'm just not close enough to it. Okay, so should be in there, very nice. Now we'll focus up here at the top. You're looking to make sure that these two are in the same place and that you've got the same amount kind of here at the top. Make sure your stone is seated. If you're having trouble holding all that, we can put a spot of tape around the body of it too. Make sure it's very seated. I always like to make sure that I can actually see the bottom, so I don't just put tape all the way over it, because if it shifts, I want to be able to see it. Okay, so put it in there. Just going to cover this belly right here. Help me hold on to all of it. But I can still see the bottom. And I can still see where my 2 wires are through this. Okay, that'll help you hold it all together while we work the top. Make sure that the wire's flush with the back. And that your 2 sides, are standing upright. Okay, so that's pretty good. And my 2 bands here are fairly even. 1, 2. I might have to do one more here, I think. That's my count. Okay. So they're pretty even. Just going to tap them and get them all back under control here. Make sure that my sides don't have any bubbling. I'm flat against my stone. Now I'm going to take the bend at these 2 tops. And I want them, to meet here in the middle, and then we have to bend back up for the veil. So what I'm looking at right here is I'm above my stone about 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 wraps. When I bend over the stone, it might get me here. I might have to go a little deeper, right? So I'm going to actually wrap, because I can visually see that I might need one more. I could take the pre-bend, but what will happen is all these wires will collide over here. So I kind of like to try to count the millimeters if I can, or eyeball the millimeters, I should say, to see where this wire might have, these wires might go back, right? So I gave it one more. I'm going to tap it. I'm going to start this bend down here. I'll hold my plier just above that corner and hold my wraps. Make sure that my side is actually flat with my back. Don't let this side bulge out as you take this bend. So give yourself, some gap between the plier and the top of the stone. As I come down on this, these wires are going to want to collide with those. So ideally, right here at the top of the bands, I could turn them out slightly like this, so that when I make this turn, they don't collide so much. And I'm trying to just get that corner eyeballed, because if I need to put another wrap or two, I could do that now before it's fully down, and I think I need about one more. I do it this way. Certainly I could have measured, but that's to assume that all stones are perfectly, symmetrical that we're using here. And I don't know that about yours. So if we were completely symmetrical, then, I would measure off about the same amount here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wraps from your turn. And you see my turn, it looks like it's going to be softer here at the shoulder because I can't quite get my plier in there. So I'm going to try to make a nice sharp corner here by getting just the tip of my plier to start that bend, and this one, as they come down, these are going to spread into the other one. So I'm going to take my plier right here, I'll turn it out and up a little bit more as I work this neck down. And that's a good corner. You see how it wants to push back out? That's what I'm talking about. You got to kind of control that. And I think that's about right about there. I'm going to just turn this upright a little bit more. I'm going to leave that half round a little bit just in case I need it. Okay, to get this edge, you see the bubbling there? I haven't closed anything yet. It's just taped, right? So I'm not going to struggle it. I'm just going to release my tape. I'll part this a little bit, enough to get my plier in there to sharpen up that corner. A little bit more. Okay. The bubbling is coming from here, so I'm trying to get this little strip of wire more flat so that this turn will be a little sharper. It's not going to be an exact point. We don't have a tool for that. People have tricks, but I haven't tried them, so I can't comment on how to make it any sharper. So that's how I do it. Okay? Once you get that side worked into sharpness, Make sure you're fully back against your stone and retape everything. And repeat on the other side. See, that looks much closer to me now, so you can just lay this little guy down the back here for security for right now. So that's what I'm working for. You see, here's where my bottom wraps end. It's about where my top ones end. Just to give you an eyeball. It doesn't have to be exact because wires are going to shift, but it kind of helps you. And that's how you kind of sharpen up that corner a little bit. It's always this little edge right here. Okay? And that's about as good as I can get it. Maybe you'll learn tricks elsewhere and you can get it better, but... So I added 2 wraps over here. I'm going to go ahead and just do that right now to this side. Now I added 1 wrap. Maybe I did 2. I'm going to go 1 for right now. Tap it all together. Make sure I'm nice and squared off. Making sure that this edge is, this band is against my stone. I'm going to go ahead and start the outward turn on my top wires. And I'm not going to use my stone, but rather my pliers to start this bend of my corner. Okay, then I'll tap this other side because remember that the plier is wedged. So one side is going to always be different, a little bit sharper than the other side. Okay, and as I come down, I can see that it's going to work out. Turn these wires up, push. Just work patiently. Turn the wires up. I think I did do 1 more wrap, maybe not, we'll see. Because after I tighten it up, it might move over. Take 1 more to the back. I think that's what I did. And I'm just visually looking to make sure that my 2 corners and my wrap distances are the same. You don't have to be exactly precise because not all stones are. So now I'm going to untape this a little bit and try to sharpen this corner up. So I'll just undo this half, enough to pull it out slightly so that I can get my flat nose in here and give a nice tap to these edges and make sure that it's sharp. You're not changing any distance. See that gap? You want to take that gap as close to the stone as you can. That's about good. I'm just gonna scooch it down. Turn my band of pliers up and bring these 2 sides together. Go ahead and take the tape off. Woo! And hopefully you got something that looks a little bit like that. It should feel fairly secure. I would probably, it's so tight, you probably don't have, this is a small stone. If it were bigger, I would probably insist that you get the top corners, but you can see here, it's pretty tight, just with this and this pull right here. So I could, if I didn't want to do anything more at the top, I could just make these prettier. Kind of mess this one up a little bit. You'll just scrape it until it has a nice elegant shape. Just scrape it with your finger. With your fingernail like this. It isn't going to give you any more wire because we've made hard bends here now, so this is all you got. right? So just work it. And if you were closer to your body than I was, this might have turned out more elegant. I've got a little bit of rough bumpy going on here, so I'm going to take my bent nose, I'm going to put my tips up, I'm going to use that soft curve, and I'm just going to straddle the curve that doesn't look so good, and with the slightest breath of pressure, I'm going to just use my bent nose to bring this wire into elegance and take out those weird little bits where I don't feel like it turned elegantly. It's going to shift the wire. You just have to watch everything and make sure to shift the wire back. Okay, remember that this is not together, so keep it together here at the shoulder, or put a little tape if you need to, work at the body at all. Okay, so that looks a lot better. It's laying down on my stone. I have a little bit here that's a little bit bumpy, so I'm just going to raise it and do a little tapping. These are gentle taps, really gentle, so that you don't scrape the wire, and then just lay it back down with the pad of your finger here and your fingernail onto the stone, and that looks pretty good. Just want to make sure both sides look similar and that you feel like the stone feels like it's in there. I will just tape these so that the frame stays together for me while I do this. So I'll come to this side, might raise, just try to get a little higher on that curve, a little more onto the body, and make sure it lays down on the stone. Okay? That's pretty good. You're looking to see that they're similar, and you're working to get them a little more similar. You don't need to do everything I'm doing right now. I'm just trying to even up my two sides. I'm going to get a little bit more turn on that guy. I'm looking at my tips here to make sure that they're right there at the edge of my stone. Looks pretty good. Okay, stone should feel nice and secure. So now we can deal with the bail. You really don't have to do anything more. This should stay here. This is a pretty tight, secure wrap. If you feel like you got too much motion, take from the back and draw that wire hard onto the stone like this. It'll cinch it up more. Right about like that. So now we have a real nice stable back. We've got a real nice stable pretty front. If you feel like the top, if yours is longer and the top feels like it's a little loose, we'll take some from these top wires and we'll bring them down. Okay, so while this is taped and I've got the neck exposed and I'm happy with the body, we can go ahead and get rid of these guys. We don't need them. I keep them there in case I need to make one more wrap or anything like that. And while this is taped, I'm going to work real carefully with either my nylon jaws or my flat nose. You don't have to kill it. Just get a nice little tap on it and bring them together right there at the neck, really together. Okay? We can snip these half rounds off just deep inside here so it's not felt. Take this one off. Give yourself enough if you need to tuck it that you can turn it under and tuck it into that little bitty space right there. Turn it the end and then get on top and tap it until it falls in there. Slide it in there. Just like that. Make sure that this one is tapped down, that you can't see it. This is the back, so we won't see it, so don't worry. I always clean the back up too, right? Make these things pretty because the back shows. And we'll put another support wire back here in case you feel like you need it. Okay, so just even that out a little bit. That looks good. Got a little stray end right here that popped out from my last wrap, so I'm going to pull it because you don't want to leave that. That'll undoubtedly come undone. So you just want to get control over that. You see anything like that, deal with it. Tuck that end back in there where it belongs. And that sometimes happens to these ends when we turn these things. Okay? So that all looks pretty good. Ooh, just made you an earthquake with my camera. All right, you guys. Whew, tough wrap. But here it is. And so now in part 2, we'll deal with the bail and we'll do just a little bit more design work. And then we'll finish this beauty. See you then for part 2.